Hi everybody. So I wanted to paint a female version of the Hindu god Vishnu. Now Vishnu has 4 arms, so before I started I had to figure out how exactly I was going to make all those muscles work together. To start with, I just started blocking in a basic normal human anatomy, and I'm going to start with the muscles of the chest. Now the chest has 3 distinct sections. You've got the bottom section, middle section, and the top section, and they attach to the arm in the opposite order. So the bottom section originates on the ribs and attaches at the top position on the arm bone. The arm bone is called the humerus. The middle section overlaps the bottom section and attaches below it on the humerus bone, and the top section starts at the clavicle, the collarbone, and attaches at the bottom position on the humerus bone. So it creates sort of a fan shape. Now down below here I'm stretching out the rib cage to accommodate the extra set of muscles. I got 2 sets of collarbones there, and the head of the humerus, which is roughly like a ball, not exactly, but that's a good place to start. So the chest muscles on the bottom section are going to attach like normal. The bottom section of the bottom chest muscles attach to the ribs, but the bottom section of the top chest muscles I decided to attach to the collarbone of the lower section. Now that's a lot of gibberish unless you're looking at it closely, and if you've never studied anatomy it's going to be kind of confusing, but I wanted the muscles to flow as smoothly as possible. It's impossible, this anatomy, but I wanted to look like it could be kind of real-ish. So now I'm just fleshing out the drawings a bit to try and get a sense of how the volumes will fit together, and it was especially difficult getting the shoulders to fit in there because there's not a lot of space. It doesn't make any sense to have 4 arms. The shoulders are called the deltoid muscles, and they also have 3 sections. You have the front, the side, and the back, and from this view you can only see the front and the side. So right there I just put in the line distinguishing the deltoid muscles from the pectoralis muscles. Pectoral muscles are the chest. In a really extremely muscular, like a bodybuilder for example, sometimes it can almost seem like the pectoral muscles, the chest, and the deltoid muscles, the shoulders, can sort of blend together. But in most normal people, there's a very clear distinction between the deltoids and the pectorals. In fact, a really thin person, there's a fairly significant triangular gap right between the chest and the delts. And especially in a very thin woman, like this is the sculpture that I did for the sake of the painting, you can see a very clear distinction where the shoulder ends and the chest starts. So then moving on to the back, it's quite a bit more complicated. You've got the shoulder blade, which is the flat bone that lays against the back of your rib cage. On the shoulder blade you've got a couple of different muscles. The one that I'm working on right here is called the infraspinatus. It covers most of the shoulder blade and then sweeps around and attaches to the outside of the head of the humerus bone. That right there is the teres major on the bottom. It starts on the shoulder blade and attaches to the front of the humerus bone. And then right here, I'm working on the rhomboid muscle, which attaches the inner surface of the shoulder blade to the spine itself. Most of the rhomboid is not visible except for this little triangle between the trapezius, which I'm blocking in right here, and the teres major and the scapula. Now the trapezius is a complicated muscle. It's sort of vaguely diamond-shaped, but it actually comes in a couple of different sections. It starts at the base of your skull and sweeps out almost to your shoulder, goes along that straight line there, that straight line just below where I'm drawing there. That's the spine of the scapula. It's just a protrusion from the shoulder blade. And then it sweeps around and attaches at about the middle of your back, more or less. So that line right there, that horizontal line, that's the top of the latissimus dorsi muscle, or you call it the lats. Anytime you hold something in your hand, when your elbow is relatively low, and you pull it towards your body, you're using your latissimus dorsi, you're using your lats. The problem is, I need to squeeze in another scapula in here somewhere and fit in all those muscles for the lower set of arms. So I have to figure out a way to combine the muscles right there, the lower part of the trapezius, and the latissimus dorsi. So you'll see what I decided to do with the top section here, with the top trapezius and the top latissimus dorsi. I actually combine the lower trapezius and the top latissimus, the lower traps and the upper lats. All the words sound so similar. Boy, that's confusing. But you'll see what I mean. Okay, so right here, that's the spine of the lower scapula, right? That bony protrusion. And then I've got, here we go. So that should be the latissimus, the lat muscle, but it's going to be the top part of the trap muscle instead. I decided to combine those two things to create a nice rhythm to match the same approach that I used on the front, on the chest muscles. In a little bit, you'll see me play with it a little bit to see if I might combine the trap muscles down the center right next to the spine, but I changed my mind. So here we got the teres major, starts on the spine, or starts on the scapula, I mean, but goes in front of the humerus bone. This is the infraspinatus, just like the top one, starts on the scapula, it sweeps around and attaches to the outside of the head of the humerus. Humerus is the upper arm bone. I'm just doing a little bit of shading to make it a little bit more clear. Should I combine these two? See, here I was thinking maybe it would be interesting to have one big shape, but I want to keep that rhythm. I want to keep the rhythm of two distinct sets of muscles that just sort of lock and flow together, because otherwise it starts to look kind of goofy. I mean, it's 4 arms. It's always going to be kind of odd looking, or very odd looking. But you see that triangle right there that I just put that line in? That's the only part of the rhomboids that shows. Okay, so the bottom trap, right, this muscle that I'm doing right there, the top of that trap muscle is actually what the top of the lat muscle should be. So that's really the biggest change right there. And then on the bottom scapula, I'm going to do just a normal set of latissimus muscle, or the lat muscles, in a second here. But okay. First I'm going to do the deltoids. From the back you can see the back two heads. The back head, it's called the posterior head of the deltoids, and the lateral head, which is the side. So the real challenge of this, when I get to the sculpture phase, is not only getting all the anatomy in the right place, but it's figuring out which muscles are working and how the position of her arms is going to change the shape of each muscle and how they're all interacting and interrelating with each other, especially because the figure of Vishnu in the sculpture is a very thin woman, so that changes the proportions quite a bit, as you can see right here. And of course, she's wearing a garment around her chest, so a lot of that is obscured, but I guarantee you it was all correct underneath that. And this is the sculpture that I ended up with after many, many, many hours. I wish I could show you how I made all of the clothing and jewelry and stuff, but I did all of that work before I started making YouTube videos, so in the future I'll record my process. And once the painting was finished, I no longer need the sculpture. So it was kind of painful for me to dismantle the sculpture, but it was always intended only as a reference for the painting, so I don't want to keep anything out of sentimentality. I'm a big believer in acknowledging the fact that everything is temporary. So this felt sort of like a ritual to me. I do miss the sculpture a bit, but I don't regret taking it apart. Even though my work is always slow and time-consuming, this painting took a lot longer than it should have because it wasn't my first attempt. The first attempt was an oil painting, and I stopped about maybe 3/4 of the way through it because I realized I'd made a mistake in the way I was laying the paint down, and the layers were not adhering to each other, so I'm just going to have to use that panel for a different painting.